Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome back to Monday's Mastermind webinar. We have a really important and exciting topic this evening that we will be sharing with you. As always, I am so pleased that you all are investing in yourselves and in your businesses by showing up and attending and learning all that you can to ensure that you are preparing yourself and your business for the future success that you deserve. So, thank you so much for joining in. I want to give maybe about 60 seconds for additional folks. We had about 38 people registered, so I want to make sure that they aren't having any challenges accessing. And I will then start here in just a moment and introduce our panelist, who is a wonderful and knowledgeable expert in the field of minority certification. She used to be in charge of this whole process for a local nonprofit, and I'll let her share more about that in a moment. So, thank you all. Just sit tight. Hopefully, we'll have the rest of the folks join in, and then we'll get started in about 60 seconds. As you all remember, you can submit your hi Dennis, welcome. You can submit your questions in the Q&A section. I can see it here, or you can submit your questions via chat. Either one works. I can see both. All right. And so if you have questions throughout, just put them in the Q&A section or put them in the chat section, and we'll answer them in the last bit portion of this presentation. Okay. All righty, and take good notes, especially for those of you who are interested in corporate uh, contracting and government contracting of any sort, whether it's local, state, or federal. Take good notes. All right. Okay, good. Welcome, everyone. Just letting everyone get a chance to get situated and dialed in. We had 38 people register for this, so I want to make sure I give you ample time, but I also don't want to run out of time because there's much to share as it relates to minority certification, especially when it comes to the legal changes that we are experiencing in government contracting due to affirmative action legislation or actions. So I want to make sure that you guys get what you need from today's session. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Folks will continue to join in. Again, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A section or in the chat, and we will touch them or answer them at the end. Alrighty, today's session is about minority certification, and I have a special guest, Sheena Thomas, who is the president of Lingo Strategic Partners, a local company that is um, dedicated to helping demystify the process of minority certification and what it all means and what value that brings or may bring to your company. Sheena has been in this arena for 20 years. How long have you been doing this, Sheena?
About 25.
Okay. It's been a minute. I met you when I was a newbie into this space and when I had my certifications. And so I'm so glad that we've stayed connected socially and
Yes.
you were able to join us tonight. Again, Sheena knows a great deal about this topic. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, I will move the PowerPoint forward, but and then you can present, okay? And just tell me to move forward if you need me to, okay?
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you all. This is probably one of my favorite subjects, certification. And my favorite thing about this work that I do is really educating business owners on what certification is and how you can get it. And then, most importantly, how you can use it to really help leverage and build your business. So, a little bit about me before we get into it. And Cynthia gave a perfect bio, so I won't belabor the point. But I will tell you that I started my business because I recognized that there was a gap in education for entrepreneurs when it came to certification. And a lot of business owners would start the process and they would either get non response because they wouldn't complete it, or they ended up getting denied because they didn't understand some of the nuances of certification. And so my business, Lingo Strategic Partners, was really born out of bridging that gap for those owners and being able to be that liaison between an application and a certification. And so, what I'm going to do today is just kind of break down what certification is. And I will tell you, I'll give you this disclaimer. Generally, my demystifying certification sessions are about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So, this is a highly condensed version. But you will have an opportunity to connect with me afterwards if you should have any additional questions. We can go to the next slide. So, what is it? That is probably one of the most important questions, something you may be asking yourselves. Well, certification is really three things. The first thing, it's a designation, and that designation is assigned based on the majority ownership of the company. So it's based on that company being owned by a minority, woman, socially, economically disadvantaged individual, or individuals from underserved groups. That could be veterans, service disabled veterans, it could be individuals of the LGBTQ community. It could also be, depending on where you are in the US, a separate designation for African American businesses or Hispanic American businesses. But it truly is a designation for your business. It's also an investment. So, aside from your federal and state certifications, you will pay an application fee. The application fee will be nominal, but there's still an investment. And as an entrepreneur, anything that we spend on our businesses, we need to know what that ROI is going to be, no matter if it's $200 or $20,000. So understand that if you go through a certification process, you will have to pay, if it's for council or even a local designation, an application fee, along with a renewal fee. And then finally, it's a leveraging tool. And that's probably the most important thing that it is. It's a leveraging tool for your business, and it builds awareness of your firm's MWBE status. So it's not a guarantee that you're going to get a contract. It's not a guarantee that you will even be invited to bid on opportunities. It truly is a leveraging tool for you. You will still have to bid work as if you were never certified, because at the end of the day, the corporations and municipalities are looking for best value, they're looking for best price, and they're looking for an opportunity to build a relationship with a business. We can go to the next one. So, some basic certification requirements. I tell business owners, if you can't meet these four requirements, you need to take a beat and get your stuff in order first, because these are the four primary things that you need to be able to meet before you apply for certification. The first thing is going to be, you have to be 51% owned and controlled by a minority, woman, socially and economically disadvantaged individual if you're applying for DBE or ACDBE certifications, or 51% owned by veterans, service disabled veterans, but 51% is the magic number, not 50.1 and not 49.9. And so it's very important that all of your ownership documents and everything clearly state that the company's majority ownership is controlled 51% by those minority or women or individuals of those groups. The next thing is, you must be able to prove up your capital investment. Now, some of you may be like, oh, well, I started my business and I didn't have anything invested. Well, you did. You opened up a business account, and you probably transferred money from your personal account to your business account to open it up. That's capital investment. You maybe went out and bought a laptop or a smaller piece of equipment. Maybe you replaced a keyboard for your computer. That can be capital investment. Whatever you used in order to start or support your business is proof of capital investment. And it can be shown in three ways. One is going to be money. So you want to make sure that you have bank statements, that you also have your canceled checks or copies of those canceled checks to show where the funds originated from. It can also be shown through equipment. So if you purchased equipment, then copies of those receipts. If you have a loan agreement for a particular piece of equipment, then a copy of that loan agreement and proof of the loan payments would suffice as proof of equipment investment. And if you're leasing equipment, you can also provide lease agreements. Now, as far as real estate is concerned, if you own property aside from your personal residence that is used for the operations of the business, then you can provide proof of that via your deed, mortgage statement, or your property tax statement. The key there is that that piece of property must be used for the operations of the business. That can either be a brick and mortar location, it could be a separate piece of land that you use as an equipment staging yard. But as long as it is owned by you or you can show where it's owned by the company, that is how you can prove up real estate investment. The third thing is making sure that you possess technical and managerial competence. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to know everything about the business. It's okay for you to hire people that are smarter than you. And if you're an entrepreneur, you know that that's the right thing to do. You hire people that know things that you don't know. But you must possess the competence or the ability to make those business decisions. A key example I'll give you, if I come out and I do a site visit, and let's say that your business is in the realm of underground utilities, and I'm out on a project site and I ask you, well, tell me what you're doing here. And you can't clearly tell me what's going on that project, you fail to prove up technical competence. So that is where it's key to have a working knowledge of both the technical and managerial aspects of your business at all times. And then finally, make sure that you're able to perform independently. Now, independence is kind of a gray area because it vacillates on both the certification side as well as the contract compliance side. When we're looking at it from a contract compliance standpoint, we're making sure that you are performing a commercially useful function. But for certification, we're looking at it to determine whether or not you are sharing resources with another company. That could be space, it could be equipment, and it could also be employees. So if you happen to be in a situation where you're sharing any space, you're sharing any resources, make sure that you have some type of lease agreement in place. And make sure that you are paying for those services because what the certification agency is going to ask you is if, let's say, you are sharing staff. If you were to go out and use a temp agency, you would have an agreement with that temp agency and you'd be paying that temp agency for the utilization of those particular employees. The question would be, what makes this relationship any different? And so you have to be ready to answer that question. And 9 times out of 10, there's really not an answer that's going to make that relationship different. So make sure that you have proof of why you are sharing those resources and how those resources are being paid for. Next slide, please. So there are 16 different MWBE designations that are used in the US today. 16. Now, you may have commonly heard of MBE, WBE, and SBE, Small Business Enterprise. But depending on where you are, there are going to be different designations. So if we're looking at local certifications, so city and county certifications, your common ones are MW and SBE. But if you're in San Antonio, you also have access to African American Business Enterprise in addition to an MBE and Hispanic American Business Enterprise in addition to MBE. If you are, let's say, on the West Coast, you would have access to the LGBTBE, which is the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender Business Enterprise, as part of their local program. So depending on where your business is located or where you're doing business is going to make a difference in the designations that would be afforded to you at a local city, county level. Then you have state agencies. Here in Texas, you receive the historically underutilized business, which is the hub designation that is given through the state comptroller's office, not to be confused with the hub zone through the SBA, and not to be confused with an MBE. The state program is not a minority business enterprise program. And Cynthia mentioned some of the changes that have happened to these programs due to affirmative action, and that's one of them. So the minority business component of it has been removed from that program. So you are only certified as a historically underutilized business with the state of Texas. And that certification works for you for any state funded agency opportunities. And then you have your Federal Department of Transportation DOT designations, which is the disadvantaged, and the airport concessionaire disadvantaged business enterprise. Now, these two designations fall along the DOT's program, and generally they're pretty much heavy construction type contracts, but there are a myriad of other services that you can provide as a certified DBE or ACDBE. But generally, you're looking at work with the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the Federal Transit Administration. So if you're looking to do business in this North Central Texas area with DART, with the Fort Worth Transportation Authority, with DFW Airport, Love Field, the DOT certification, that DBE, ACDBE certification, may be something for you to look at if you're going to do business on federally funded projects. Now, the airport concessionaire certification is an interesting one. It's not just for businesses that are doing business in the airport as a concessionaire, but if your company has a direct agreement with an airport concessionaire, you're providing them with products, you could also be certified as an ACDBE. Now, the DOT DBE programs do come with a personal net worth limitation. It is a much more in-depth certification than your MBE, your WBE, your local designations. So be prepared to prove up your personal net worth not exceeding more than $1.32 million. And that is not including your personal residence or the applicant firm. The next federal bucket is going to be for the Small Business Administration, or the SBA. Now, the Business Administration covers all the other federal agencies aside from those under the DOT program. So those are not to be confused. If you have an SBA designation, it does not give you access to those DBE opportunities. Now, for the federal SBA's program, you can go to the System for Award Management, which is SAM, SAM.gov, and you can register your business with SAM. When you register your business, you'll be given the opportunity to basically self certify or self identify all of those designations that are in white. The three designations that are in gold, your 8A small business, your hub zone, and your EDWOSB, or economic disadvantaged women owned small business certification, will require a separate vetting process, meaning you'll have to submit an application and additional documents. The 8A certification program is a 9-year program, and I implore anyone that is interested in going through the 8A certification or the 8A small business program to definitely get a mentor and talk about that process and figure out if you are ready for it, because you have 9 years to work it. And after that 9th year, you graduate. Okay. The hub zone, that designation is based on the company being located within a hub zone and 35% of the employees living within a hub zone. Those two criteria points must be maintained at all times for the company to maintain their hub zone designation. And then the economic disadvantage women owned small business is just that. It's based on the 51% ownership of that company of women being economically disadvantaged. So there's a personal net worth criteria that must be submitted and vetted for that particular designation. And then finally, you have your corporate or your council certifications. So your corporate councils, which are the National Minority Supplier Development Council, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, they have regional councils. Here in the DFW area, you have the DFW Minority Supplier Development Council and the Women's Business Council Southwest that respectively certify MBEs and WBEs. But you also have organizations like Disability In that certify disabled individual businesses. And you have the LGBT BE designation that is certified through the NGLCC, which is the National Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. So those are some other council or corporate designations that you can apply for if you meet that criteria. Now, the important thing with these council certifications is to remember that your corporations are big partners of these councils. And so if you know that your client mix is predominantly corporations, you definitely want to take advantage of getting that certification. The key to certifications is really identifying who your client is, that will tell you which certification you need to go after. But we'll get into some more details of that in just a moment. We can go to the next slide, Cynthia. So why should you get it? So the main thing is you get exposure to buyers and decision makers. I'm going to tell you all right now, the councils do a great job of putting together quarterly meet the buyer luncheons. When you get certified, you go through an MBE or a WBE orientation, and now supplier diversity professionals from organizations come and they meet you, they learn more about your business, and now there's an opportunity for you to develop a relationship with them. So there is that exposure, and you don't really get that exposure if you're not certified with those agencies or those councils. And the buyers and decision makers are the ones that you need to know. It's great to know the president, it's great to know the CEO, but you need to know the person that's making that buying decision within that organization. Because at the end of the day, they are the ones that are going to look at your information to determine whether or not you're a good fit and whether or not they want to do business with you. Educational and business development resources is also a great advantage of being certified, because there are lots of opportunities for you to help expand your business acumen, for you to also help, again, business development, networking, putting you in connection with people that may not necessarily be part of these large corporations. There may be some direct relationships or opportunities with other certified MBEs or WBEs. So that's also an avenue to look at, especially if you are starting out and you don't currently have that capacity, meaning you haven't done business on these large contracts. Think about the opportunities that exist going to some of these pre-bid meetings, some of these networkers, and they may not have anything to do with your business, but there may be an opportunity for you to make a connection with a potential business owner that may end up being a contract or an opportunity for you to do some work. I go to construction events all the time. I'm not in construction, but it is inevitable that the question is asked, how many in the room are certified? And maybe 30-40% of the folks raise their hand. So now I get to look around the room and identify the individuals that are not certified, and now I get to make contact with them. So that is a great business development opportunity for you. It's a competitive credential for your business, absolutely. Again, I stated at the top of this, it's not a guarantee, but it is a competitive credential. And then it gives you access to corporate and government contracts that some require, a lot of them encourage MWBE participation. It's important for you to understand, again, who those clients are and what type of certification you need to get in order to make sure that you are in line to gain access to those opportunities. But being certified puts you on those lists. When I was at the NCTRCA, the city of Dallas, city of Fort Worth, Dart, whenever they were doing some type of outreach event, they were always asking me to give them a list of certified vendors that they could send their information to. Well, if you're not certified, you're not in that database and you're not getting that information. And some of these things are focused strictly for certified businesses, because think about it. They have set a goal. They've set an annual overall goal, and they also have project goals. And so if they're not meeting their annual goal, they're going to be looking for certified businesses that can help them get to that goal. And if you're not certified, then they're not likely going to look at you for an opportunity to meet that goal. They want to do business with companies because it's a win-win for them. You have a great product, you're able to perform, but in addition to that, everything that they spend with you can now count towards that goal. So think of it as a win-win for your business. We can go to the next one. Now, this was just put out by the National Minority Supplier Development Council. It was their 2022 Minority Business Economic Report. And basically, certified MBEs for 2022 had a total of 316.2 billion in total annual revenues. Certified MBEs. That means that there are dollars being spent with certified MBE, and that's just MBEs. We're not even talking about WBEs, DBEs, ACDBEs. That is just MBE firms. So if for no other reason, get certified so that you can start gaining access to the money that is out there. Some of these contracts are considered set aside depending on what type of certification you have and what program you're in. Some of these corporations have very robust supplier diversity programs, and it's not just pro forma, and you can see it in their annual numbers. But at the end of the day, being certified puts you at a great advantage to gain access to be a part of this $1 billion circle, basically. Next slide. So, how do you get it? That's the big question. Well, there are three agencies that I mentioned in this area. You have the NCTRCA, the DFW Minority Supplier Development Council, and the Women's Business Council Southwest. So, depending on who your client is, if your client is city, county, the DISDs, the Fort Worth ISDs, any of those ISDs, then the NCTRCA may be the certification that you go after first because their underwriters or those that support their program are heavier on the municipality side. They have a few corporate members, but that's not their bread and butter. So if you're doing business with municipalities, cities, counties, go after the NCTRCA certification and get your MWSBE certification out of the way. If you know that you are doing business with Federal Highway Administration, Federal Aviation Administration, Federal Transit Administration, the NCTRCA is the only agency in this area that provides the DBE and the ACDBE certifications. So you would have to go to them in order to get those designations. For the councils, again, they respectfully certify MBEs and WBEs. However, a bonus with being certified with those councils is that you receive your hub, your state hub certification automatically. As long as the business is located in the state of Texas, you meet all of the other qualifications for those two council certifications, you will get a hub certification. So now you basically get two for the price of one. Okay. Um, for the councils, again, their underwriters are going to be very heavy on the corporate side. So if you know that your client mix is heavy corporation, you want to go ahead and get those council certifications out of the way. A question I commonly get is one better than the other? No, especially if you are a minority woman. Getting the DFW MSDC or the Women's Business Council Southwest, there is not going to be one that's going to be better than the other and give you more opportunities than the other. These corporations are members of both of these councils. Processing time frame is going to be up to 90 days. That's generally what they give themselves to process your application. However, if you've ever gone through the process or tried to, it may be a little extended. Okay. I will definitely tell you to be sure to pick up the phone, send an email if you see yourself approaching that 90-day processing time and you haven't heard anything. And then I've listed there the application fees. Again, these are the initial application fees for the NCTRCA. This is a flat fee for both of those certifications. For the councils, it's on a scale. So it's based on the total revenues of the business, but they start from 270 and 350 respectively. Next slide. So the application process. So timing can vary, and the timing is really going to vary based on how long it takes you to get your application together. If certification doesn't do anything else for you, it will definitely help you get your documents together because there's lots of paperwork that you have to submit. And then the timing is going to vary based on how you submit that application. So when you submit it, everything is done via an online portal. You are not printing this off and mailing it. Everything's going to be submitted electronically. And when they get it, they're going to do an initial review. Now, they are not going to do an initial review the day that you submit it. They're probably not going to do an initial review the week that you submit it. Because think about it, there are hundreds of other people trying to get certified at the same time. So patience is key here. But I will tell you that when you submit your application, making sure that it is complete is the best thing that you can do for yourself. So once you submit it, they're going to do a package intake or what we commonly call in the certification industry an initial review. That initial review is just a basic going down the checkbox of documents that you were supposed to submit with your application. If anything's missing, that's when they will send you a request for additional information. They will give you 2 weeks to send it in. They don't hear from you in 2 weeks, they may send you another document and say, hey, we still need your information. The key is to always respond timely. Even though the process is going to take a while, make sure that you're sending your stuff in before those deadlines. Once everything is received, the period between your package intake and the desk audit is probably going to be the longest wait time for you. And so every application is pulled in queue based on the time that it was completed. That's when the 90-day time frame starts as well. It does not start when you submit your application. It starts when the application is deemed complete. The desk audit is where they're going to do a fine tooth comb of your application. They're going to put it up against your regulations and they're going to determine where in your application there are any red flags. And if there are, what regulation does it not meet for certification? And then you're going to probably get a nice little letter that's going to tell you why your company doesn't currently meet the requirements for certification. But before they send you that letter, they're going to do a site visit. The site visits, depending on the agency, may be virtual or they may be in person. Okay. Either way, they're going to perform a site visit on your business. They're going to ask you questions about the business, basically just to make sure you are who you say you are and you're doing what you say your application is doing. After that site visit is when the final decision is rendered. If everything is great, you get certified. If you do have some issues, you'll get a letter from them, and there's always a process to appeal if that happens to be your situation. Next slide. So, some pitfalls to avoid. I love to leave these with you all. One, I stated it, never submit an incomplete application. I don't care how excited you are to get certified, just don't do it because it is going to delay your process and it's going to frustrate you to no end because they're going to keep asking you for documents. And then you're finally going to get tired and you're just not going to send it in. And then all that work was done for nothing. So don't submit an incomplete application. The other thing that you need to do is watch your redactions. Yes, you're going to send in a lot of personal information. You may have your taxpayer ID number, your bank account numbers. The only thing that these certification agencies allow you to redact is your social security number. So if you redact anything more than that, they're going to ask for those documents again. So be very careful with your redactions. Do not embellish. And embellish is a nice way of saying just don't lie. Some of these affidavits come with monetary penalties and jail time. When I was at the NCTRCA, we did have a DBE applicant. It was a husband and wife. The lady had went back to work. She had not stated that she was back at work. I happened to be reviewing her application for a renewal and noticed that she had a W-2 and it was a substantial W-2. And so I inquired and she said, "Oh, yes, I'm working again." And her husband was the one running the business. Well, they received that DBE certification based on her 51% ownership in the company. So we had an officer come down from USDOT. They did a full investigation. And not only were they fined, they also were sent to prison, she and her husband. So it is not to play with. Do not embellish and make sure that if you are running the business, you are running the business, especially on the federal side. There are people that watch contracts all the time. They watch businesses that receive these contracts all the time, and they will blow whistles. And so you don't want to be caught up in anything like that. These programs were developed to give minority and women owners a level playing field. So there's no reason to add anything else to your application but the truth. Check your ownership document dates. This is another reason that could cause you to become denied. If those dates don't pan out, there may be questions as to what happened or why there's missing information related to ownership changes. So be sure that all your ownership information is up to snuff. If you started the business in 2022, you should not have stock certificates that were issued in 2018. And if you did, then you need to go back to 2018 and figure out what was going on in your business that you weren't aware of, okay? And make sure that everything checks out. Now, there's nothing that you can do about the past, but you need to be prepared to put together a statement or a letter of explanation with your application before you submit it. Finally, outside employment could harm your application. I just gave you a grave example of how it can harm your application. It could end up putting you in jail. But if you are outside, if you're employed outside of the business, and let's say you may be providing services that are not normally provided during normal business hours, it's something that you need to be able to explain in your application. Because what certifiers are going to look at is if you are employed outside of your business, who is running it in your absence. There are some business industries that will allow for some outside employment, but there are a lot of them that don't, because the majority of your businesses, your clients are calling you between 8 and 5. And if you're not there at the business, who is managing it for you in your absence? So be very, very careful with your outside employment. And then your compensation must be commensurate to your position. This is also key. If you think about it, the CEO of Amazon, I'm pretty sure, is not paid less than the secretary. So your compensation in your business needs to be commensurate to your position in those same ways. And they will check your tax returns. They will also ask for your payroll records if there are any questions of compensation. So be sure that you're being compensated commensurate to your position. Also, if you have an office space and there are multiple owners in the company and you're the majority owner, make sure that your office space is commensurate to your position as well. I've done site visits, and the majority owner was a woman, and her office was in the back of the building in a very small office, and her husband's office was in the front corner with lots of windows. Well, immediately I'm thinking that he owns the business, because perception is everything. So please be sure that your compensation and all the things around your ownership are commensurate to your position. Next slide. And so I put this in here to let you know that we can definitely help you with certification. Not only can we help you just with the educational front of it, but we also provide certification management solutions for our clients. And this is where we take you from applied to certified. We help you with putting together your application, preparing your documentation. We also do a document compliance audit on your information to make sure, again, that those dates and everything are in line based on the ownership that you have presented in your application. We do an issue of concern analysis. This is where, again, we take your application and we look at it and we say, well, what would stick out as a red flag? And if there is a red flag, we tell you what those are, but we also provide you with remedies before we submit your application. We notarize all your affidavits. And the most important thing is we're there with you through the entire process. So any requests for additional information, we respond on your behalf for that. So once we submit it, we're not just washing our hands of you. We are there with you until a decision is rendered from the agency. Next slide. And then here's my contact information. I would encourage you, if you have any other questions, you can scan that QR code in gold. It'll send you to my calendar link and you can book a free consult, and I will be happy to answer any additional questions you may have. Again, this was a very condensed and quick version of certification. So you may have additional questions. Please don't hesitate. I am just a phone call or a Zoom call away. So thank you, Cynthia, so much. And if we have any questions, I'd love to answer those.
All right, thank you so much. This is wonderful. I'm going to go back before I check the chat and Q&A, just to ask a
Mhm.
couple of questions that I want to ensure that I point out. Um, Here, $316.2 billion dollars in total annual revenues. Often what I'm asked is what types of businesses are winning contracts. Some people may not think that their business type or industry is a fit for corporate or government contracting, but can you give us just some examples of the types of industries that fit?
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you that there is an opportunity for just about any business out there. It may not be a large contract that's being let. It could simply be a corporation is looking for a caterer and they need that caterer to be certified. It could be they're looking for a consultant to provide DE&I consulting. They could be looking for mediators. They could be looking for people in IT. They could be looking for folks to provide them with promotional items. They could be looking for individuals to come in and do some type of audit of their department. I mean, think of corporations kind of tiny cities. They buy just about everything. But just because there isn't a large contract that's being let doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity. Think outside of the box. and make sure that you're making those connections with those buyers, because there are some procurements that they may not be able to meet. I remember many, many moons ago, the city of Dallas had a contract for pool chemicals, and they were buying the pool chemicals from outside of the state because they couldn't find anyone inside the state that could provide them. Well, there was a woman who had a business, and she pivoted her business when she found that out, and she was able to start providing them with pool products. So you have to be kind of willing to pivot in order to grow your business. And you have to be willing to make those connections and look at opportunities that are not necessarily big contracts. I have seen people start off with just one invoice, and they did so well that they established a need for their service within that organization. And now all of a sudden there is a contract built around what they provide, and they're renewing it on an annual or biannual basis. So I will tell you, there's probably nothing that isn't purchased. You probably could even find Ouija boards or something that are purchased by some organization. And also remember, corporations are a big part of spending. Municipalities are a big part of spending, but nonprofits are also a very big part of spending. And nonprofits, you would be surprised, also have supplier diversity components as part of their procurement processes. So look at nonprofits as an opportunity to expand into contracting as well.
Excellent, thank you. The other question that I had was about once you are certified, the process for the business owner is to register with those agencies that they want to target. What would be the next step after certification?
Absolutely. So, after you get certified, you want to register with the particular agency or corporation that you're interested in doing business with. Every one of these organizations has a vendor's profile or a supplier diversity website that you will register, and you'll say who you are. You'll put in your NAICS codes, your description of your services. Once you do that, you don't stop there. You then figure out who your contact is within that organization. It may be the small business liaison officer, it may be the supplier diversity coordinator, or it could be, excuse me, actually the decision maker of those particular departments. But you can send an email and say, this is, I am who I am, I'm providing these services, and I'd be interested in being connected with the decision maker for these particular procurements. Now, I will tell you, you're probably going to have to send multiple emails because I've been on that side in supplier diversity. So one email is not enough. And a very quick capability statement, or even a quick, like 3 to 5 slide pitch deck that just introduces your company, is also helpful. I find that when I receive materials like that, it was much easier for me to identify what the company was doing and then disseminate that to the decision makers within the organization. But those are the two things that you will need to do. And the third thing is you will need to learn the procurement process for that organization, because not everyone procures services the same way. Some people direct you to the decision makers. Other people say, well, I'm the supplier diversity professional and everything has to come through me first. So you need to understand those nuances to make sure that you're doing the right things so that you're being put in contact with the right people at the right time.
Excellent. And so I want to point out for those of you who are looking at the slide that I have up here, within local city or county, you have many different departments. You want to really study what type of government agency local within your city or county exists. What do they buy historically? And then, as Sheena explained, get to know who those decision makers are. I can't express enough how important it is to build a rapport and relationship with decision makers, just to let them know what you do and a little bit about your credibility and history. Because when the right opportunity presents itself, in your top of mind, you're going to have an opportunity to learn or hear about whatever opportunity is coming down the pike. That goes also with state agencies. as well as with the corporate councils or corporate companies or the council. I believe that all of these councils do an extraordinary job of creating opportunities for networking. And if networking isn't your thing, it's going to have to be, or you're going to hire someone who is comfortable with networking and engaging with decision makers at these events and getting involved, because that's where the deals are made, essentially through relationship building and showing up. And I say that from personal experience of just being a certified minority woman owned business, being in the right place at the right time with the credentials and winning multiple contracts because of that. So I just wanted to share that you want to study and really understand what agencies exist in these categories, who you would like to do business with. It's not everyone. You want to be smart about where you fit and what they've bought in the past. Okay.
Yes,
All
that
right.
was a very good point, Cynthia. And if I could just piggyback real quick, I
Mhm.
often get asked, should I get all of the certifications? And the question is, are you doing business with all of the entities and agencies and corporations that require these certifications? And if your answer is no, then to Cynthia's point, make sure that you're directing your efforts towards those particular certifications that align with your particular client. It's not a one size fits all, but you may never need a DBE certification. So why go through that process if you're not going to do business on federally funded DBE projects? So be very smart about it because the certification process is intensive and it's time consuming. And so you want to make sure that you're utilizing the best resource of your time in accessing the certifications that are going to bring basically a return on your investment of time and money.
I agree with that. The other thing that I often hear as well is people who start the process and they do become frustrated because they haven't necessarily managed their documents and data when they started their businesses. They didn't have a process for storing and keeping information and then trying to go back to get bank statements from when you started and trying to figure out where's that signature card and just all of the small little details that the application is looking for. If you're disorganized, it can create frustration.
Yes, absolutely. And so if that is your reality, I'm so sorry. And I hope that it gets better and I hope that you find all those documents. But if that is not and you were starting out, please keep these documents together. And I will tell you, keep a hard copy and keep an electronic copy. Once you go through the application process and you have submitted all the documents for your application, save those documents in a folder and label that folder minority certification applications. And that way you can go back to those documents and you have them all the time. Some things you may need to update, like financial statements, your tax returns, but the majority of that information, the business or origination documents and things, you will already have in a folder and you can easily access those. So, bank signature cards is another one. When you open up your bank account, make sure that you don't throw that information away or that folder away because they give you your bank signature card when you open up your account. But you can also get a letter from the bank identifying the name on the account and the authorized signers. So, just be sure that you're keeping those documents in place because you will need them.
Very true. Thank you. All right, so let me go over here and okay. Let me start at the top. Question for Shana. Can you repeat the tip about including info about your business and bids? Did you say a slide deck?
I think you may be referring to the pitch deck.
Uh-huh.
So when you are, after you submit your vendor profile, you'll want to send a capability statement. Okay. And generally, a capability statement is a back and front, it's a one page document I can definitely share a template with you. If you don't have one, I can send that to Cynthia and she can share it with you all. But if you Google capability statement, it'll bring up dozens of them that you can review. And the pitch deck, no more than 3 to 5 slides. Okay. I would try and keep it to three. Really, you just want to introduce who you are, what your company does, and if you've had any previous experience or any type of highlights that you want to, bring to light that you feel will make a difference in the decision making, then put that in that pitch deck as well. But it needs to be condensed because supplier diversity professionals are looking at, you know, dozens of emails a day, and so you need to make sure that it's very condensed, but a capability statement and or a 3 to 5 slide pitch deck.
Okay, I'm answering Tammy's question. She was asking, what's the difference between an assumed name certificate, certificate of organization, articles of organization, and certificate of formation?
Oh, okay. I think somebody is in the application process right now. So your assumed name certificate is for a sole proprietor or a partnership that is only registered with the county in which your business is located. Once you organize with the state of Texas or whatever state you happen to be in, you will get your certificate of organization or your articles of organization. Now, the certificate of organization formation, depending on the state, could also be called your articles of formation as well. But generally, the articles of formation is going to be the application that you fill out and that you submit to the state. They're going to stamp date that and send it back to you electronically, along with a certificate of filing, which basically states this is your certificate of formation. If you have an assumed name under your organized or incorporated business within that state, you will apply for an assumed name certificate through the incorporations office of that state. So that is a separate assumed name certificate through the incorporations office of that state. It is not to be confused with the county DBA that you receive.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. Okay, Calandra was saying hello. Okay. Some organizations will do a single bid for goods and services under $3,000 to $10,000 with MWBEs. I think that's more of a statement of sharing. Um, so yes, what I would say is that some organizations, government agencies may have what we call a threshold or a limit, whereas they will do small contracts that don't require three bids or may not require city council approval or upper management approval if they are below a certain dollar amount. And you'll want to research and understand what that threshold is for each agency and what types of goods or services they may buy for those smaller contracts. Anything? Okay. Let's see here. Tammy. Okay. The capital investment in the beginning we paid via their personal account. We didn't know any better. Do we send those bank statements and redact the other items not pertaining to the business? So let me make sure I get this question right, Tammy. You're saying that you made a capital investment into the business by taking money from your personal account, putting it into the business account, to and then paying for items through the personal or the business account. And if you submit the documentation to show that, do you redact any of the other items that were not pertaining to the business that were on the statements?
So on your personal bank statements, you can redact other transactions that are not related to the business if that's your personal bank statement, and you can simply highlight what was utilized for the business. So that redaction will be okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, next one. Okay. I'm having trouble with my birth certificate. I was born in Canada and my race is not on my certificate. My parents are Jamaican and their birth certificate does not have race either. I've reached out to MSDC via email and not have not received a defined or definitive answer.
Yes. Okay. So you are not alone. In your case, what you will do is simply submit. If your birth certificate has your parents' name on it and it says that they were born in Jamaica, that should suffice because the US is really the only country that puts ethnicity on birth certificates. Everywhere else that you're born, it's basically the country in which you were born that is listed. So, in that case, if your birth certificate has your parents' names and it lists that they were born in Jamaica, then you can submit that. And you can simply put a statement together, a letter of explanation stating that your parents' birth certificate, because they were born in Jamaica, does not state ethnicity. It simply states that they were born in Jamaica. And that should suffice for your birth certificate request. But yes, the MSDC is very particular about that. They want to see the ethnicity on the birth certificate. And unfortunately, that's not the case if you were born outside of the US.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Crystal Dobson has a question. How has 8A program been impacted? I'm assuming by the changes related to affirmative action. I posted an article from Washington Post about July's, uh, Supreme Court changes. And so she stated she submitted an application before the ruling. It's currently in a pending status. She's not sure what to do.
Mm. Well, I think like all programs, there is still some uncertainty as to applications that were submitted before the rulings actually happened. I have not seen any final notification from the SBA pertaining to the 8A program and those applications that were submitted prior to the actual ruling. So that's something that I would probably need to direct a response to you once I'm able to figure out what the process is. But like many of us, it's limbo for us as well. Um, there were applications that were also submitted, to the state of Texas that were minority business, 51% owned by minorities. And so those applications, there are still some of those that are in a limbo status as well. So, as far as the ruling is concerned for the 8A, I do not have a direct answer for you on what the impact to your application is, but that's something I can find out, and I'll be happy to follow up with you.
The only thing that I have heard is that they may require applicants to resubmit without race,
Hmm.
but it's not definitive.
Yeah, that's the last thing that I heard as well. So,
All right. Thank you. Okay, you're welcome, Tammy. Does the chat work? Yes, Calandra. If you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. Ruth, okay. What certification would you recommend for a minority, woman owned small business? I currently do not have a lot of staff, so I would only be interested in small caterings of 150 max guests. That depends on if you're trying to cater to corporations, airport, government agencies, school districts. Ruth, give us more clarity on what type of agencies or corporations you would be targeting for small catering opportunities, right, Shana?
absolutely, yeah.
All right. All right. Put it in the chat before we run out of time, Ruth, and we can try and answer that for you. Can the assumed name certificate be done online?
Yes, so you can file all of your documents with the state of Texas Secretary of State's office. You can file that online. If you go to the SOS, I believe it's sos.gov, Texas, you'll be able to file your incorporated documents, LLC documents, your assumed name, all of that. Now, as far as the county, if you're talking about a county assumed name, I believe you can print the application off, I believe, and fill it out. I'm not sure if you can submit it to the county electronically.
Depends on what county you're in. Dallas is used to be fax. Um,
Mhm.
Tarrant County, they don't have an upload feature. That was in person or mail, and the rest of them across the state, I don't know. Okay, next question from Tamara. Is there a minimal amount of revenue your business needs to have prior to seeking certification? Does revenue matter?
So it really depends on who you're going to get certified by. And I say that because you may be looking at certifications outside of the North Central Texas area. For the three agencies here, there's not a minimum revenue. You can be a startup business and get certified. If you're going to go through the DFW MSDC, you will need to provide financial statements. Even if you are a startup business, you'll need to provide financial statements. So be prepared to submit that if you have not filed tax returns yet. But as far as a minimum revenue, there is not a minimum revenue for certifications in this area. But I would implore you to do your research if you choose to get certified outside of this area, and make sure that there isn't, because for some local certifications, depending on the city or the county, they do have those minimum requirements. In fact, they also have requirements that you have to be in business for a certain amount of time as well. So it really depends on the particular agency.
Thank you for that. You have a particular amount of time. They're looking for solvency, meaning if you are awarded a contract, do you have the financial stability and foundation to deliver? That's essentially what they're looking for. And if you
Mhm.
don't, they may not take the risk in awarding you a contract because you may be not ready or too small or not have the financial foundation to meet the demand or need. And so that's what they will be evaluating is solvency. The other piece to that is knowing what area you want to serve along with what agency you want to serve as well. And really looking at, are you more so looking at federal opportunities or local opportunities or corporate opportunities? And that will help you dig a little deeper into researching what the requirements are. But just know that they differ, okay, across agencies. All right, that's that. And let me see. Um, Making sure I didn't miss any. Where do certifications like Buy Black from the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce fit in the different types of DMWB certifications?
So they don't really fit in these. Those are other designations that are used outside of this scope. When you think about corporate contracting and governmental contracting, like the Buy Black certifications, all of those different designations, I will say, are not really applicable in these types of programs. There may be corporations that look for organizations that have that kind of credential. But as far as your mainstream procurement programs, they generally are not going to be looking at the Buy Black or any of those other types of designations. The ones that you're looking at here on the screen are probably the most familiar certification designations that you will see across the US in most programs.
Correct. Buy Black was it for a short description was created to create a directory of Black owned businesses that the chamber and Issa Rae and her team came together and said, how can we help Black owned businesses create a directory and feed opportunities to this directory? That's what it was formed for. So it operates as its own directory and its own credentialing for opportunities that they wish to bring to the table through to feed that directory. It's outside of what we're talking about here. Doesn't mean that it's not valuable, but it's for its own purpose. Okay. Let me make sure I haven't missed any. Okay, I own a custom cake business and I've been in business over 13 years now. I used my personal money in the very beginning to buy supplies, but I don't have the receipts from everything purchased 13 years ago. Any advice on how to prove that infusion of capital?
So the best thing that you can do is put together a statement and try and recall about how much it was that you invested and where those monies came from. So if it was your personal account, you'll want to put that in the statement. You know, I, Sheena Thomas, invested $50,000 between this period of time, be it 1 year, 6 months, whatever that time period was. These monies originated from my personal account. However, I do not have access to that information at this time. Get that statement notarized and you'll submit that with your application. That's the best thing that you can do. But please make sure that you send that statement in because they will definitely ask for that proof of capital investment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Um, if you haven't already tried, you may try the bank you were with. That's 13 years ago. It may not be available to you, but you potentially could try to get bank statements from that time period. It will cost you money and it may take a couple of weeks, but you can try if you remember what bank you were with at that time.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Dennis was saying good evening. Can you pay for it online? Can you pay for what in particular, Tammy, online? I don't know if you were meaning the certification application.
So if your question was about the certification application, yes, when you get ready to submit your application, you will make all those payments at that time. It'll flip you over to their payment screen. Um, Please know that once you pay your fee, it is non-refundable. So you want to make sure that you submit everything in a timely fashion if you're requested any additional documents. And if your file, for whatever reason, should be withdrawn, like if you submit it and you decide you want to withdraw it because of whatever reason, you're not ready or you don't have all the information, they will not refund that application fee. So make sure that once you make that payment, you're ready to actually go through the process. But everything is paid through their portals.
Perfect. Thank you. Two questions, and then we will end. The next Ruth had came back and said she's interested in doing business with school districts and corporations. So,
Mhm.
Ruth, those two boxes that are on the screen right now for local and county government, and the other for corporate, those contain the types of certifications that could fit for either or. So it's on the screen right now for local and or corporate. And Shayna, just real quickly, if she were to get, say, a WBE with either NCTRCA or WeBank, can that suffice for both school districts and corporations, that one WBE?
So in this area, it absolutely could. I know that DISD, they take the council certifications as well. Fort Worth ISD does as well. So it's just something that you'll need to make sure, depending on the ISD that you're wanting to do business with, that they do accept that council certification. But in this North Central Texas area, generally they accept all three of those certification agencies. So if you get it with WeBank, that may cover you for both, and you may not even have to go through the NCTRCA for that separate WBE.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a question that also is presented by people trying to figure out. Okay. One more, and then Calandra, if you've typed it in, I'll read it. Is the hub certification determined by the local? No, excuse me. Is the hub certification determined by the location of the business?
The state hub certification means that your business has to be located in the state of Texas. The hub zone certification given through the SBA is based on the company's headquarters being located in a hub zone. If you go to sba.gov and just type in hub zone map, it will bring up the new map that was released in July. and you can put in the address of your business, and it will show you whether or not the business is in a hub zone track. And so those are the two qualifiers for the state hub and in the hub zone. In addition to the business being located in a hub zone, 35% of the employees must also reside in a hub zone.
That's an excellent point. Thank you so much. Finite details that many may not know. All right, very good. Let me make sure I haven't missed anything in chat. Nope.
Y'all had
Colette,
some great questions.
yes, some great businesses on here, and I think this can work for them, for those that are interested. You're welcome, Tammy. Calandra, I don't see your question here. I want to make sure I don't miss you before we depart. I think I have answered everyone's questions here. All righty. Sheena, I want to say thank you again. As always, you're amazing. I appreciate you. Wish you all the success in the world and your company and what you're doing for small businesses. It's very valuable. Any of you all who have questions and or are interested in applying, let me ask you this real quick. I have a couple of people who are out of state. Do
Hmm.
you serve folks who are out of state?
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. That's good. So not just Texas. That's good to know. I'll make sure I make a point of that and share it. Okay. Thank you again. I appreciate your time. This is wonderful. Hopefully, we answered all of you all's questions. Don't forget, next Monday, we'll be back at 6:30 for our next. This is going to be the commercial loan simulation. I'm actually going to be working with the banker from Wells Fargo to walk you through the entire process of applying for a commercial loan. Remember, I give you the real deal Holyfield. I don't just give you top level stuff. I'm going to show you how to do it and what the underwriters are looking for. That's next Monday. So come back next Monday at 6:30 for to learn the inside secrets of how commercial lending works and how to fill out the application properly. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.